Rachel Thompson had always believed she was raising her children the right way. She taught her son, Oliver, to be kind, to treat everyone equally, and to embrace people from all backgrounds. As a single mother, she worked hard to give him the best opportunities she could, and choosing Maplewood Elementary, a diverse school celebrated for its inclusion, felt like the perfect decision. Rachel wanted Oliver to grow up in an environment where he could learn to appreciate different cultures, build friendships with children from all walks of life, and understand the importance of diversity. But one chilly afternoon, as Rachel picked up Oliver from school, that carefully crafted vision began to crack. As soon as he climbed into the back seat, his shoulders slumped, his face pale and withdrawn. Rachel glanced at him through the rearview mirror, instantly sensing something was wrong. "What's up, buddy?" she asked, trying to keep her voice light. "Did something happen at school today?" Oliver stayed silent for a moment, staring out the window as the car rumbled down the road. Then, his voice came out small and trembling. "Mom, is my skin color a problem?" The question hit Rachel like a punch to the chest. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles turning white. "What do you mean, sweetie?" she asked carefully, her heart racing. Oliver sniffled, his voice cracking. "Nobody plays with me at recess. They said I'm different, that I don't belong because I'm white." Rachel felt her throat tighten. She had no words, just a growing sense of disbelief and anger swirling inside her. How could this happen? She had always believed that diversity and inclusion meant unity, that it meant everyone had a place. It was why she had chosen this school in the first place. When they got home, Rachel sat Oliver down at the kitchen table and pressed for more details. He explained how he had been ignored during group activities, left out of games at recess, and even teased for his skin color. "They say I can't understand them because I'm white," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. Rachel's heart broke for her son. She hugged him tightly, whispering, "You've done nothing wrong, Oliver. You belong here, just like everyone else." But even as she reassured him, questions flooded her mind. How had this happened? Why hadn't anyone noticed? And why, in a school so proud of its diversity, did her child feel so alone? That night, as Oliver slept, Rachel sat awake in the dim light of the living room, staring at the walls. Her son's words replayed in her head. "Is my skin color a problem?" The question haunted her because she didn't have an answer, at least not yet. But she knew one thing for certain: she would not let this continue. The next morning, Rachel woke up with a determination she hadn't felt in a long time. Her son's words still echoed in her head. "Is my skin color a problem?" She couldn't shake the thought of Oliver, sitting alone at recess, feeling excluded for something he couldn't control. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. She had chosen Maplewood Elementary because of its diversity and its reputation for teaching inclusion. How could her son feel so alienated in a place designed to bring children together? Over breakfast, she studied Oliver as he pushed his cereal around the bowl. His usual energy was gone, replaced with a quiet sadness that hurt Rachel more than words could describe. "Hey," she said softly, sitting down next to him. "Do you want to tell me anything else about school? Maybe we can figure this out together." Oliver shrugged. "It's not just recess," he muttered. "Sometimes during class, when we do group projects, nobody wants to be in my group. They say I don't get it because I'm white." Rachel blinked, feeling a wave of anger and confusion rise inside her. "Who says that to you?" "Some of the kids, not all of them," Oliver said quickly, looking down. "But it's like they don't think I'm good enough to play with them." Rachel wanted to say something to fix it immediately, but no words came. How was she supposed to explain this to a 7-year-old? That there were complicated, grown-up things happening in the world that sometimes spilled over into children's lives? She forced a smile and said, "We're going to figure this out, buddy. I promise." Seeking answers. After dropping Oliver off at school, Rachel decided to take action. She scheduled a meeting with his teacher, Ms. Ramirez, hoping to get some answers. When Rachel entered the classroom later that afternoon, she noticed the colorful posters on the walls, the diversity of the students, and the warm atmosphere. Everything looked right, which only made Oliver's experience more confusing. "Thank you for meeting with me," Rachel said as she sat down across from Ms. Ramirez. "I'm worried about Oliver. He's been feeling left out, ignored, and he says some of the kids are treating him differently because he's white." Ms. Ramirez frowned, her expression turning thoughtful. "I'm really sorry to hear that," she said slowly. "Oliver is a wonderful student, and I haven't seen anything out of the ordinary. Kids can sometimes say things without understanding the weight of their words." Rachel nodded but felt her frustration bubbling. "I understand that kids don't always mean harm, but he's coming home in tears. He's starting to think there's something wrong with him. That's not okay." Ms. Ramirez sighed. "We focus a lot on inclusion here. We encourage students to celebrate their differences, but I'll make sure to keep a closer eye on Oliver. If I see anything inappropriate, I'll address it." Rachel left the meeting feeling conflicted. She appreciated Ms. Ramirez's willingness to listen, but the response felt too dismissive. "Kids can say hurtful things without understanding," Ms. Ramirez had said. But wasn't it the school's job to make sure all children felt included? Rachel pushes harder. Over the next few weeks, Rachel noticed small changes in Oliver's behavior. He became quieter at home, less interested in the activities he used to love. He stopped asking if his friends could come over and started dreading school altogether. One evening, as Rachel sat on the couch scrolling through the school's parent portal, she noticed a flyer for the upcoming Cultural Heritage Celebration. It was a big annual event at Maplewood Elementary, showcasing dances, food, and traditions from the diverse student body. The idea behind it was beautiful, but for Rachel, it highlighted how deeply her son felt excluded. Determined to address the issue head-on, Rachel requested a meeting with the school principal, Mr. Thompson. A frustrating meeting. Sitting across from Mr. Thompson in his tidy office, Rachel laid out everything Oliver had told her. She shared his experiences at recess, the exclusion during group activities, and his heartbreaking question: "Is my skin color a problem?" Mr. Thompson listened with a polite but guarded expression. "I'm really sorry to hear that Oliver feels this way," he began carefully. "Our school prides itself on being inclusive. We have diversity programs, cultural weeks, and lessons on tolerance. But, as I'm sure you can appreciate, there are growing pains when children learn to navigate these differences." Rachel clenched her hands in her lap. "I understand that," she replied, her voice trembling. "But how does it help Oliver? He's 7. He doesn't understand growing pains. He just knows that no one wants to play with him because of the way he looks." The principal shifted uncomfortably. "We can't control everything kids say or do, but we can address it. I'll speak to Ms. Ramirez and the recess monitors to make sure everyone feels included." Rachel left the meeting feeling like she'd hit a wall. She couldn't shake the feeling that Oliver's experiences were being brushed aside as part of a broader learning process. But at what cost? Was her son supposed to suffer so others could learn? Conversations with other parents. That evening, Rachel reached out to her friend Nina, a black mother whose daughter, Maya, was in Oliver's class. Nina listened patiently as Rachel explained what Oliver had been going through. "I don't know what to do," Rachel admitted, tears welling in her eyes. "I feel like nobody's taking this seriously. Oliver is miserable, and I can't just stand by and let it keep happening." Nina sighed, her expression thoughtful. "I get it, Rachel. What Oliver's going through isn't okay. But you have to remember, for a lot of families, exclusion isn't new. Kids of color have been feeling left out, judged, or ignored for generations. That doesn't make it right, but it's why some people might not see this the same way you do." Rachel sat quietly, processing Nina's words. "So what do I do? I can't just let this go." "You don't," Nina replied. "But the answer isn't to blame the kids or the school. It's to help make things better. Find a way to open up conversations, real ones, so the kids can learn to see each other as equals." Taking action. Inspired by Nina's words, Rachel came up with an idea. She proposed to the principal the idea of an Inclusion and Kindness Week, a program focused not just on celebrating differences, but on building empathy and understanding among the students. Activities would encourage children to work together, share stories about their lives, and focus on what they had in common instead of what set them apart. Surprisingly, Mr. Thompson agreed. "It's a great initiative," he said. "We'll support it however we can." Rachel threw herself into planning the event. She coordinated workshops, brought in guest speakers, and organized group activities where students could learn more about one another. One session, in particular, asked students to share stories about their families, what made their homes special, what traditions they loved, and who they were beyond appearances. Oliver's moment. When the event kicked off, Rachel was nervous. Would it actually make a difference? Would Oliver still feel invisible? On the second day, during one of the group storytelling sessions, Rachel quietly slipped into the back of the classroom to watch. It was Oliver's turn to share, and he stood nervously at the front of the room, holding a piece of paper. My mom and I build model airplanes together," he said shyly. "We've been doing it since I was little, and it's really fun. I want to be a pilot when I grow up so I can fly real planes." A silence followed, and Rachel's heart sank. But then one of the other kids spoke up. "That's cool," a boy said. "Can you bring one to show us?" "Yeah," a girl added. "I want to see how you make them." Oliver smiled for the first time in weeks. "Sure," he said, his voice bright with excitement. Rachel wiped a tear from her cheek as she watched her son return to his seat, his shoulders lighter than they had been in months. A mother's hope. Throughout the rest of the week, Rachel noticed small but meaningful changes. Kids who had once ignored Oliver started talking to him during lunch and recess. By the final day of Inclusion Week, Oliver ran to the car with a smile. "Mom, I played soccer today, and they picked me for their team." "That's great, buddy," Rachel said, feeling a deep sense of relief. As they drove home, Oliver looked out the window and said, "I think maybe they know me better now. I don't feel so different anymore." Rachel smiled softly, her heart swelling with pride and hope. This wasn't the end of the work to be done, not for Oliver, not for the school, and not for her. But for now, it was a start. The weeks following the Inclusion and Kindness Week were a time of quiet change for Rachel, Oliver, and the Maplewood Elementary community. The initiative had been more successful than Rachel had hoped, though she knew it was only the first step in a much larger process. At home, Rachel saw a shift in Oliver's spirit. He no longer dragged his feet on the way to school or dreaded Monday mornings. Instead, he began talking about new friends, names Rachel hadn't heard before. "Mom, I played tag with Maya and Jamal at recess today. We're starting a club to build model airplanes at lunch," he shared one afternoon, his voice full of excitement. Rachel's heart swelled at the mention of Maya, Nina's daughter. She smiled and asked, "A club? That sounds amazing. Who's joining?" Oliver grinned. "It's me, Maya, Jamal, Lucas, and Emma. I told them about the planes you and I build, and they want to learn. Jamal said his uncle works at an airport, so maybe we'll get to see real planes one day." Listening to Oliver talk with such enthusiasm reminded Rachel of the little boy she thought she had lost. His energy had returned, his laughter ringing through their home again. It wasn't just that the teasing had stopped. Oliver now felt like he belonged. For Rachel, that meant everything. Seeing the bigger picture. Though things were improving for Oliver, Rachel remained reflective. Her experience navigating this challenge had been eye-opening. Sitting at her kitchen table one evening, she called Nina to share her thoughts. "You were right," Rachel said, staring into her half-empty mug of tea. "At first, I couldn't see the bigger picture. I was so focused on protecting Oliver that I didn't think about how deep these issues run." Nina's warm voice came through the phone. "It's hard, Rachel. When something happens to your child, it feels personal, and it is personal. But there's history behind all of this. That doesn't mean Oliver's pain doesn't matter. It does. But the answer isn't blame. It's understanding. It's creating spaces where kids can grow without feeling like they have to choose sides." Rachel sighed. "I get that now. The hardest part was hearing people dismiss it, like Oliver's feelings weren't real because he's white. I didn't know how to handle that." "It's complicated," Nina replied. "For so many kids of color, being excluded has been normal for generations. That doesn't mean it's right, it's not. But it's why people sometimes miss the hurt when it happens in reverse. It's not about ignoring Oliver. It's about making sure everyone feels seen. What you did with Inclusion Week, that's a step in the right direction." Rachel smiled faintly. "It's a start. I just hope it keeps going." Shifts at school. Rachel's hopes weren't unfounded. At Maplewood Elementary, the success of Inclusion Week sparked a conversation among the staff and administration. Teachers began incorporating activities that focused on empathy and understanding differences into their lesson plans. Group work assignments were deliberately mixed to encourage students to collaborate with classmates they didn't know well. Rachel noticed the changes when she volunteered for a class field trip to the local science museum. Watching Oliver interact with his classmates brought tears to her eyes. He was laughing with Jamal and Maya, pointing out cool exhibits and sharing fun facts about airplanes. At one point, she overheard Maya ask Oliver, "Can I come over sometime to see the model planes you build with your mom?" Oliver beamed. "Yeah, my mom's really good at it. She taught me everything I know." Rachel couldn't stop smiling as she watched the children, once divided by invisible walls, now playing and learning together without hesitation. A new sense of community. At the next PTA meeting, Rachel was surprised to see Principal Thompson publicly thank her for her efforts. "The Inclusion Week initiative was an important moment for our school," he said. "It opened up a conversation we all needed to have, and it reminded us that inclusion is not just about celebrating diversity. It's about making sure every child feels like they belong." After the meeting, parents approached Rachel to thank her. Some shared similar struggles their children had faced, while others admitted they hadn't fully understood the depth of the issue until now. "I'm glad you spoke up," one mother said. "Sometimes we think diversity means the problem is solved, but it's more complicated than that." Rachel nodded, feeling validated but also humbled. She had started this journey thinking only of Oliver, but now she understood the broader challenges at play. Real inclusion wasn't just about fixing one child's problem. It was about creating a community where everyone, regardless of background, felt valued and heard. A hard but meaningful conversation. One evening, after tucking Oliver into bed, Rachel sat on the porch with Nina, enjoying a quiet moment under the stars. "You know, I've learned so much from this," Rachel admitted. "At first I was so angry. I thought, how can this happen to my child? But now I see how important it is to look at the whole picture. Kids learn these things from us, whether we say it out loud or not. If we want things to change, we have to teach them to see beyond labels." Nina nodded, her expression thoughtful. "And that's why we need parents like you to speak up. Parents who care about all kids, not just their own. The truth is, we're all figuring this out together. No one has all the answers, but it's the effort that counts." Rachel smiled. "Well, you've been my guide through this. I don't think I could have gotten through it without you." "We help each other," Nina said with a shrug. "That's what community is supposed to be about." Oliver's growth. Months later, Oliver was thriving. He brought home invitations to birthday parties, excitedly shared stories of new friendships, and proudly displayed a shelf of completed model airplanes, some of which his classmates had helped him build. One afternoon, as Rachel helped him clean his room, Oliver turned to her and said, "Mom, do you remember when I asked if my skin color was a problem?" Rachel paused, her chest tightening. "Yeah, I remember. I don't think it's a problem anymore," he said simply, looking up at her. "Jamal says we're friends because we both love planes, not because of what we look like." Rachel swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "That's because you're learning to see what really matters," she said softly, pulling him into a hug. "And that's what I'm most proud of." A mother's reflection. Rachel often thought back to the first moment when Oliver's innocent question had shattered her sense of certainty. Is my skin color a problem? It was a question she never thought her child would have to ask, and it had opened her eyes to truths she hadn't seen before. The journey hadn't been easy. It had forced Rachel to confront her own assumptions and listen to perspectives she hadn't considered. It had taught her that diversity, while beautiful, often came with challenges that required work, patience, and empathy. More importantly, it had shown her that exclusion hurts, no matter who it happens to. And while the experiences of marginalized communities were rooted in deep systemic inequities, exclusion in any form was something that could only be healed by understanding, connection, and kindness. As Rachel stood on the porch one evening, watching Oliver and his friends race around the yard, Jamal, Maya, Lucas, and Emma, she felt an overwhelming sense of hope. They weren't thinking about the differences that had once divided them. They were just kids laughing, playing, and learning together. And Rachel realized that this was what she had wanted all along, not just for Oliver, but for every child. The work wasn't finished. It never would be. But the small steps mattered, and sometimes small steps were how the biggest changes began. Is my skin color a problem? Rachel thought back to that question, her heart no longer heavy with uncertainty. No, she whispered to herself. It's not, and it never should be.